Here we go. All right, Chase, we're ready. Ready. Okay. Oh, geez, that's loud. Good evening and welcome to the HUUSD School Board meeting for February 18th, 2026. My name is Ashley Woods and we are calling the meeting to order at 6:02. Okay. Okay, the first thing we do is public comment. Is anyone sitting out there on our list to speak? Caitlin, why don't you join us? You can introduce yourself and then go for it.
Thank you. Does that work? Okay, terrific. Caitlin Hollister from Waterbury. Thanks so much for hearing my comments this evening. I spoke at last week's meeting as well, and I'm here to address the draft calendar. First, I do want to acknowledge the correction that it is a draft and also that the board is not voting on it. So I mentioned that incorrectly last week, but I do think the board will be taking up the topic this evening. Unfortunately, I won't be here for that section. There's a band concert down the hall that I will be attending, but I will listen to the conversation later on. And I'm glad that the board is considering the draft, and I assume there will be a discussion of the input from the community survey. I want to just make a few notes tonight. First, I do appreciate the administration's interest in increasing opportunities for teacher collaboration and curriculum development. I also want to note that in terms of the comparison to other districts, I do understand that many Vermont districts have a half-day model, and I would be interested in whether we know anything about the effects of the professional development that they've been able to provide their teachers in those half-days. So it's fine that they're doing it, and is it benefiting teaching and learning and students? Similarly, I think the comparison to other districts concerns me a little bit because I'm not sure that many other Vermont districts have had the level of interruptions that we've had in recent years, especially with flooding at Crosset Brook and at Moortown. And I want to note that I'll be advocating at the town level as well. So I feel really, really strongly about maximizing student days in our buildings. And I know that we have a good deal of control over that and some factors also outside of our control. And so looking at things like how the town meeting day calendar is arranged at our various towns, I know Waterbury is taking that up. And I think it's really important for us to be advocating for prioritizing students in schools. So again, I really appreciate your consideration of how we can maximize that student time in schools, especially given the interruptions we've had in recent years. And I look forward to hearing more about your discussion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Would anyone else like to speak? Does anyone who is in Zoom want to speak? Okay, I think that will end public comment. The next step is to approve the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Corey, first.
I second.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you to everyone who's here. We have pretty much our whole board here, and we are lucky this evening to be hearing from our local senators. Andrew Perchlick's here in the room, and Ann Cummings and Ann Watson are both in Zoom.
Chase, can you promote me to co-host, please?
Welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming. These guys are here to give us an update so that we can kind of hear what the motion movement is like up in Montpelier. Okay. Mike is setting you guys up so you are panelists.
Camera trouble.
We can hear you, Senator Cummings.
Yeah, my camera, there it goes.
Oh, there you are.
My camera gets a little fuzzy at times. Okay.
And hello, I can hear you as well.
All right. Senator Perchlik sitting at the desk of speeches. All right. I don't know who would like to begin, but we are all waiting with bated breath to hear how fantastic things are progressing at the State House and how easy this has been. Just kidding. So why don't we start with you, Senator Perchlik? Press green. Yeah, there we go.
I assume you're only concerned, or not concerned, but your main interest is Act 73 and the
It is indeed.
information.
It is.
So just for introductions, I'm Andrew Perchlik. I live in Marshfield. It's my fourth term. I'm on transportation in the morning and the appropriations committee in the afternoon. So I'm not on education or finance that deals directly with these issues, but definitely appropriations. We're dealing with the money issue around property taxes and the impact that that's having on the budget in general. There's not a lot to report, I'd say specifically, like this is what's happening. When I have met with other school boards, I've said, I talked to people on the education committees, both in the House and the Senate, and there isn't a clear plan, but that's not unusual for a legislative process where people disagree on how to move forward. So the governor has a position, some might call it a plan. The Senate chair of education has a plan or a position, same with the House, and different caucuses within the body have different ideas. So we're still in that process of trying to work out what is going to be the step forward. I think there is a consensus, or at least a majority, that we're going to be moving towards foundation formula of one form of another over the next X years, 3 years maybe. So the question is, do we need to have a map? That was what we said we needed in Act 73 to progress for the other parts. The House has put out a map just 2 days ago, yesterday. The Senate put out a map. I don't know if you've looked at that. I printed it out to bring in case people hadn't seen it, but Hardwood, I think, is in this weird kind of gray zone where it hasn't been settled. But when Senator Bongard showed me the map, he goes, I got this map wrong. Like, he's not saying this is the map, but he feels like it's necessary to have that out there so there's something to discuss and work through the issues. He has another one pager that I think is important to look at with the map about what he sees as the process. So I think it's still too early to see if we're going to have a specific map, but I think we're going to have something that's going to push us towards an education or a foundation formula and different districts of some sort or another. And I think the other thing that's safe to say is that we will have some buy down of property taxes, whether there will be the full 103 million, I think was that the governor proposed in his budget. It might be slightly less than that, but I would be willing to bet we're going to be buying it down at some level. Even though we all know that that doesn't solve the problem. It's not fixing, it's not actually paying for the costs. It's just kind of filling in the hole or kicking the can down the road. So we need some kind of change. We understand that part. So that's a high level update, and I could talk later after Watson and Cummings talk.
You have a question, Macon? No, that's okay.
I had a question actually on this last point you just
Put that.
Oh God, I'm so back. I'm new here. New guy alert. So do I need to get the door? That's a Supreme Court joke. Yes, my name is Macon Phillips. I just joined the board last meeting by appointment, and I'm planning to stand for election at town meeting day. I live in Warren, and I have 3 children in the district. I have 2 questions, but I'll just stick with one right now, which is on this buy down. To my mind, it's an issue that's basically taking it off the political stage this year because of the buy down. We're not going to have like the tax revolt and the budgets are going to pass. And it's also absolutely kicking the can. So I'm curious, 2 things. Can you characterize where that money's coming from in terms of what who's Peter if we're paying Paul? Thinking it's my kids. And second, where are you and the other senators voting on it?
Well, we don't, just to take the second first, we don't have anything to vote on yet.
Oh, so are you supporting the buy down, even though you think it's kicking the can, or are you going to oppose it to point out that it's kicking the can?
I will probably be supporting some level of buy down.
Okay.
When we look at the whole budget and the needs, that's where you make these decisions. Is this program for Section 8 housing more important than buying down the rate another 2 percentage points? So I'm waiting to see what the full need is of the FY27 budget before I make a decision on how much it is. But I think it is a political kind of fit
That was
there.
my larger question. I appreciate that second point, but who are we stealing from right now to get this year's property taxes lower for people worried about that?
Yeah, the money is coming from last fiscal year. So we ended the fiscal year June 30th with a lot more. When we closed out the books, we had a lot more money than we thought we were going to have. We had a very successful second half of the last fiscal year. So we had more money, and we thought we'd have a little bit more money. So we set some money aside for the federal budget, which we knew was going to be difficult. So we set aside some pots of money, and then we also said if there's any extra money, it's going to be set aside. So that's 70 million was extra money. It was a very large amount of money that we had. So 70 million or 74 million is extra money. And then we had this pot of 30 million that was kind of just set aside for potential federal impacts, like with the Medicaid, the Obamacare subsidies going away. Do we want to deal with that, or Section 8 or SNAP benefits? We put 6.4 million into SNAP benefits during the shutdown. So we had these pots of money. So the governor says, okay, we put that money aside last year. I'm going to use it all for buy down. So you can't say we're not taking it from a program. We're just taking it from this money that we had sort of sitting around waiting for a good use of it. But you can definitely look at the FY27 budget and say, okay, we're not going to be doing these programs for housing. We're not going to be increasing the salary of our mental health care professionals that need it. We're not going to be supporting school construction. We're not going to be supporting XYZ. So that's where the trade-off is. And that'll be the decision on how much to buy down. Because, I think the Democrats at least feel like not fighting the governor on the property tax thing was not successful. And if you're trying to support public schools, you also need to get reelected. And so it's a balancing act there.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
If I could add one piece to that, if that's okay. This is Senator Ann Watson. I would say, thank you. I would add that it does create this, because of the kicking the can down the road idea, right? So it does create this structural deficit that if we don't have 70 million, let's say we were to put $70 million towards buying down the property taxes this year, then that creates this need to provide $70 million next year to not see the kinds of increases that would have otherwise happened this year. So, and then it ends up potentially coming out of programs that would otherwise occur next year. So, and of course, that's how that works. I just wanted to make sure we pointed that out as well.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Senator Cummings, do you want to comment?
No. I think the budget starts in the House. We just passed the budget adjustment, which is the adjustment to last year's budget, last Friday. At this point, everybody is looking at the needs and the revenue and the projected revenue for next year. We don't think we will have $100 million. The budget and the revenues now are much tighter than they've been in the last number of years. And we have passed Act 73. We are still technically moving towards a foundation formula. And the question is, how do we help schools that are spending above the foundation formula ratchet down, and how do we help the schools that are below it ratchet up? And there's several ideas out there right now.
Thanks. My second question, Senator Cummings, is exactly on the point you just raised. So I just wanted to follow up there. I've been trying to understand the goal of Act 73, particularly from a dollars and cents standpoint, because it sounds like everyone agrees things are too expensive, but no one sets a target number. It just needs to be less. So I looked through the presentation that Zoe Saunders put forward earlier this month, and the only number I see is $450 million projected savings if they implement their plan. And I'm just curious, as you're thinking about the budget and the numbers, if you've seen any data that indicates to you that there actually is like forecasted savings from consolidation, because in today's 7 Days article about consolidation, once again, people are ambiguous at best about the actual value of a shorter administrative stack. So I'm curious, what are you working towards aside from just spending less?
Unfortunately, we don't have anyone from the Education Committee here. We are working towards finding a way to provide equal access to a high-quality education to every student in Vermont at a price that the average Vermonter can afford.
Is that price named? Or
yeah, that may not. I have asked for hard numbers, and I haven't gotten them yet. I have asked for hard numbers from the people that did the redistricting study on BOCES and how much they will save. Yeah. I haven't gotten hard numbers from anyone yet.
Thank you.
It's very hard to do numbers when we have at least 3 maps at play, and until you can settle on what that looks like, you can't do any kind of accurate forecasting. The school report card, I understand, is in. I couldn't find it in the website, but we've got some mixed reviews. We know that there's a wide variation in the access to education that our students are being given, and we know, and it's a mixed bag of performance scores, and so we know we need to do better, but we also know we need to do it at an affordable level.
And I think part of my answer to your question, which is a good question about the funding, and it's something that those of us that didn't vote for Act 73 were asking at the time. I'm
having some trouble hearing you, so.
Okay.
It's much better.
It's a good question, and we're asking that, and those that vote is no. We're kind of concerned about where's the savings going to come from, and I'd say it's not just that it needs to be lower, that it needs to be stable. It's not what I hear from constituents mostly is it's the drastic increases, which comes from sometimes spending, but also from the way our formula is set up, where you all could vote for a budget that's lower than last year's, but the taxes go up anyway. So fixing how we do the formula and how we have a better control over CLAs, and that it's a more controlled spending in that one district isn't perversely affecting the taxes of other districts unfairly. So it's about equity and about stability more than it is trying to lower the overall number. But since we've been kicking the can down the road, we also have to kind of address that big number that we're just using to buy down the rate.
So I recognize that nobody on at the moment is a part of the education committee. This is actually just really sort of an opinion question, I guess. if I recall, when we first started talking about this and when the governor was first releasing information, was the goal potentially by 2029? Was that the year that was sort of thrown around of when this could go into effect? And listening to sort of what's been happening over these last several months, reading the different reports, listening to some of the feedback, I'm actually just sort of curious, does it sound like this is a goal that's going to be attainable in the near future? I think it sounded like it wanted to be an immediate future, but it sounds like there are just so many unknowns. I'm just kind of curious, does this seem like this is no longer potentially the 3-year project and maybe it's a 5-year project? And I realize it's an opinion question.
That's a good question. I think that's part of the swirl that's happening. Like, how fast can we do this? And there are people in there are legislators, representative senators that don't want it to happen, so that we have that part of the discussion, saying that the problem, Act 73 is not the solution for the problem. If there is a problem, some people feel like there isn't really a problem, so we have that going on too. But I think the majority is feeling that some transformation of the way we fund it is warranted because of not having an 8% increase for property taxes that people can't afford to make. And people want to have the good schools, but can we do it in a way that's more direct, tied to what the school budget is and what they're voting on, and that's more stable? At least that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Do either of you two Anns want to comment?
You want to go? You want me to?
You go ahead. I'll go after you.
Yeah, we're seeing school spending today. We got a report on what the posted budgets are. We don't know what'll happen at town meeting, but it looks like spending is coming in at the more historic level of 3-5%. The problem is that it's above the base. We had those huge, big 18-12% jumps, and now we're going up at a more historic level, but we're starting at the top of the mountain. And so it's trying to figure out, we know we're letting teachers go, but overall school personnel has increased. And my committee's been looking at teacher health insurance, which doesn't just go to teachers, it goes to all of the increased personnel. There is a group trying to figure out something we can do other than cut the overall cost of health care, to work on all public sector basic health insurance plans. I don't know if that will be possible, but there's a think group looking at it.
Are you saying that would be basically pooling public employees into a single health plan?
I can't hear you.
Are you saying you would be pooling teachers and government workers generally into a single plan? Could you just explain that a little bit more?
Right now, everything is at a discussion level. No, I don't think they'd go into a single plan because those are separately negotiated contracts. And we're not playing with contracts. It might, at this point, it is purely exploratory, just looking at, because we know that those costs are going up and that they're a major cost driver. But I think, according to my emails, the taxpayers' health insurance costs are going up too. So we're trying, I think, to find a way to cushion the pain of the increases, and we've been doing that for 3 years now. We don't think we're going to have the money to cushion the pain next year, but we know we need to find a way to transition into a foundation formula which would not allow schools would be set with a budget and would have to budget, and you couldn't export your additional costs onto some other schools. Right now, it's probably a couple of our ski areas and Chittenden County that are paying a huge percentage of the money that's going into the ed fund, and other schools are able to export their costs there. It was our answer to the Brigham decision. It's worked for a while, but it's not doing what we need it to do right now.
Thank you.
So to get to your question, I will just say for my own part, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around how long it ought to take, in part because I'm not sure that this is the path that I want to go down. I mean, I voted against Act 73, and the timeline, I think, is a good question for the committees of jurisdiction. But having said that, one of the parts of Act 73 that I did like was a second home tax. I think there is a lot of potential and possibility around that. What I felt like I heard from voters was that their property taxes were too high, and what that means to me, in addition to taxing second homes, is the potential of asking wealthier people to chip in more. I think that there is I think there's a place for thinking about consolidation where it makes sense, but I would rather have that be a decision that is made together with the community, and to make the decisions that make sense for the communities. And I realize that can be really hard and painful, but it's just such a community level. The pain is so felt on the community level that it ought to. I think it's best if it comes from there. And I think one of the things that I was encouraged about was in conversation with the chair of Senate Education, was that he is interested in continuing to encourage voluntary mergers. And I do think that there is a place for voluntary mergers. But again, asking second homeowners and the folks who are the wealthiest folks in Vermont to chip in more, I think is still of interest to me. And actually, this is tying back to a previous comment. The one way to think of a buy down, if we anticipate, well, actually, let me back up. The reason I bring that up now is because the tax department didn't feel like they could start a second homes tax immediately, that there needed to be the listers had to go through and figure out where the second homes were, and that was going to take some time. And so that possibility wasn't going to happen until at least 28. And so was it 27? Mm-hmm. Okay, 27. So we're getting closer to that, but that was part of the timeline that I was very interested in. And thinking about a buy down, I think if a buy down is paired with, we think that we're going to get this additional money from second homes, then it's not really a buy down, it's a bridge to additional revenue. So that's just a different way to think of it. If we know that there's additional money that will become available for the future, but that's so again, a slightly different question, but thank you. Just wanted to add that.
I have a follow-up question to that. Do you sense that there's a reluctance to tax the second homeowner? Because that to me seems like low-hanging fruit, right? I mean, and I feel like I've heard from the governor that we just haven't heard that. So I'm curious, is there like broad support for that?
Go ahead, Senator Cummings.
Senator Cummings, yep.
We've actually already done that. I don't think most of us realized it, but when we did Act 73 last year, right now there's homestead, non-homestead. We divided it out into residential homestead, residential non-homestead, and everybody else. And I talked to the chair of Ways and Means. This is a revenue bill, so they start in the House. They're all charged like one this year. But she will be sending over a bill that changes that rating so that the non-homestead residential, i.e. second homes, will be paying a higher rate. Also in Act 73, that money is spent. And the way it's spent right now, we have income sensitivity. And so people are capped at a percentage of their income and their home value as to what they pay. But the Ed Fund is a closed system. And so if person X is not paying $1,000 for their taxes, then the pool has to raise $1,000 to cover that. It's an equal sum game here. And we did some calculations last year, and there are a significant number of people who would actually pay lower taxes if they didn't get income sensitivity, because if we didn't take the money out, we wouldn't have to raise the tax rate to raise the money. A little convoluted, but Act 73 says we are going to tax second homes, and that money will be used to fund the homestead exemption. So under 73, the view is that based on your income, X $1,000 of your home value will not be taxed. So that money won't go into the Ed Fund. The money that comes from second homes will fill the Ed Fund. So in theory, that should lower everyone's tax rate. The problem is until we get a count and an assessed value for those homes, we won't know what the tax rate will need to be on them, and we won't know how much we can raise. It's a good chance the more we can raise, the more we can lower tax rates or raise exemptions. So we're watching that.
What is that interest percentage? Like, what is the bump for second homeowners? What is the number?
That's what I don't know if they've said it yet. I know they intend to set it, but that will all be kind of a placeholder until your local listers and your town clerks have to update your grand list. So they have to go through, some of them now, I gather, have a subcategory for camps, which are generally homes that are not, you can't live in them year round. They don't have heat, they don't have plumbing, I'm not sure what they'll do with if your water comes out of the lake. But we're not going after your deer camps. But they don't have a listing for what is a second home. The thing with most second home owners are that they are not Vermont residents, and therefore they are not paying income tax in Vermont. They're paying it in the state that is their legal residence. For some of them, that might be a place like Florida that doesn't have an income tax. So we will be taxing them, but unless we change the law, that money is envisioned to be spent. If it turns out we can raise in even more money, then we'll have an excess of riches and have to decide what we do. We know we have no funding source for school construction. And we know that almost every school in this state has a leaky roof or needs some, maintenance, significantly priced maintenance, and we know we don't have a funding source for that right now.
And Chair Woods, to answer your question, I think the majority of people do support it. I do hear every once in a while, here's what I've heard people say is the affordability of second homeowners, which is kind of an oxymoron, but there are some people that are concerned about a flight of second homeowners, which most of us think might be a good idea for a housing crisis. But I've heard some concern like that. Just like, what would be the impact of this if we did it? But I think there's support. Act 73 has to go. We have to get a map. So if the rest of Act 73 happens, my understanding is for it to all fall into place. So even if that doesn't happen, I think there's enough support for it. Even though the governor says he won't support any new taxes, he hasn't specifically said yes or no on this, but I think signs point to yes if you look at your magic 8 ball. But it's something that seems to have a strong support, and we'll know within the next 2 weeks from Ways and Means, I think, what the rate would be and what the projections of what it would raise.
Coming out.
Thank you. Steve.
I want to go back to Senator Cummings' remark that there's no source of funding for building maintenance or construction at the state level. And we find within the district, if we want to issue a bond to do that maintenance, put that burden on our communities, that in fact the debt we incur counts against our per pupil cost. So there's kind of a double whammy where the state can't help us and we get penalized if we try to do it ourselves. It's kind of an untenable situation. Any help anybody in the legislature can give, we really need it.
Yeah.
Then why is it still law?
Well, because we have to come up with where's the money going to come from?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just to allow us to raise money, though, right, without it counting towards us, right? That's what he's saying. If we do a bond, we are penalized.
Right.
Sorry, if we do a bond, we're penalized, and that's widely seen as wrong. So, would you be losing money if we weren't penalized?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't know why we wouldn't. I don't know.
Is this a known issue or is this new?
Oh, no, this is a known issue.
And why does it exist?
And there's the spending threshold that was put back in last year. So our spending threshold meeting up with desperately needing bonds to do work meets with it feels vindictive to us. It feels like a move against us in a way.
And the only answer I can think of right now is that there is a concern about what the equity, and is it, or is it following Brigham? Are you allowed, because you're a wealthy town, to have you have a very high grand list, that it's easy for you to pass a bond and build a new ice skating rink where other schools have a hard time having running bathrooms? That could be the reason why they haven't done it. But so people have talked about, when we used to have a state aid for construction, you would say, this is what we want to use it for. And then the state would say well, yeah, that makes sense. You need to fix your roof, or you need this new space, and would okay it. So I would imagine some system like that, where for not to count towards your per pupil, that you would just say, this is what it is, and this is why it's necessary for the quality education of our students.
I can address just that from having talked to House members and House Ways and Means members. It was put in, from my understanding, I think 2 or 3 years ago, when we were seeing a big tax increase, and when there was discussion about potential district and school consolidation, that they were trying to create at the time a temporary disincentive to running towards a bond before some of those issues were settled by the legislature and the governor. That was what was told to me.
And I think we're all kind of treading water. I think we know that the present system isn't financially sustainable. As our student population has gone down, you can't pay a teacher a living wage to teach a class of 5 kids. Because you're only getting reimbursed for 5 kids, and that doesn't cover the cost. How you get that up to a sustainable level is what all of this is about. We're trying to readjust our structure to meet our present demand, but all the decisions are painful, and when we've done this before and done things that were painful and that no matter what you did, half the voters hated, we had a Supreme Court mandate behind us. We don't have that this time yet. We have been warned that the inequity of access to education could bring one of those lawsuits about, and then we would be forced to do something. I think we hope to do something before that. The bottom line is we don't have enough money to do everything that needs to be done. I have several bills in my committee, one being a second homes tax. I have 2 second homes taxes. One of them are mine in my committee, but that's been done. I have a bill to raise the rooms and meals tax up to the point where we would be, I think, only second to Connecticut, which is at 15%. I think that's the New York market. But for an area like yours that is largely dependent on tourism, that being the highest rooms and meals tax in New England would not be helpful. That's there. We are looking at a bill that would tax basically things like capital gains. It's done at the federal level, not at the state level. Several states have gone to that, and I think a version of that is likely to come out of my committee in the next couple weeks. We are looking at our entire tax structure. There's a lot of form emails going on out there about just tax the rich. Because they just got a huge tax cut at the federal level.
Are you implying that's not authentic support for that position when you say the form emails? Because there's a lot of form emails from a bunch of other organizations about privatizing schools. I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's out there too. I think the question is, if we talked about any other group, like they're homogenous, that like we do the rich, at least a lot of my fellow Democrats would jump all over me if I talked about the poor or any other the group. The rich are not all homogenous. Some of them own businesses and provide jobs here. Others are retired. Some of them are in there because they sold the business and they won't be there next year. So we only have 1,000 of them, plus or minus. We don't have a lot of millionaires. We have the 3rd highest tax rate as a state, top tax bracket in the country, but ours starts exceptionally low. We're 0.25% below Massachusetts millionaires tax, but ours starts at around $300,000 for a couple filing jointly. I sit in health and welfare in the morning, and we are having a terrible time recruiting primary care docs. Well, that $300,000 for a couple with two people working at any kind of a professional level is kind of moving them into that top tax bracket. It isn't helpful at that level. So we are looking at perhaps putting the fifth bracket back in, moving that top bracket up a bit, trying to lower that middle bracket so it doesn't discourage other state goals like primary care. We're actively looking at what is the makeup of the rich in this state. And, at this point, everything is on the table. But the bottom line is we haven't got enough rich people to raise enough money to solve all the problems that we've got, because that's also the solution to the health insurance and any number of problems. So we're trying to find an equitable solution.
We have a question. Go ahead, Pam.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a question so much as a reflection on what we've heard tonight. We've heard a lot about we're thinking about this, we're looking at that. We've seen year after year in Vermont advisory committees, study committees, and at this point, it's our children, our non-voters that we're all being asked to protect who are suffering as a result of this. So we can't figure out the school system. Our schools are now falling apart. We've had studies done looking at what we need to fix here. Tonight, we're going to have a report from our Director of Operations and Maintenance. It's concerning as a parent to sit here and look at what we've had to take away in budget cuts year after year. We've lost staff, we've lost teachers, we've lost programming. It's concerning to sit here and listen that it's still just being looked at and studied. And our kids need definitive solutions and answers. And that's what we put you in the Senate for. And I'd really like to hear that from you guys next time.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And the problem is that elections have consequences, and we have a divided legislature, and that is there's the governor and a large part of the legislature that feels that lowering property taxes are more important. And so some of the studies and what seems just like treading water is because we don't have a majority that can kind of agree on the best way forward.
There is no solution to rally around. We're being told that voluntary mergers would do it. We're being told that BOCES will do it, and schools can do that. The bottom line is schools aren't doing that. You can... it's in your voters. I mean, you can put out the budget to do everything you feel you need to do, and the voters in your district make that decision. The problem is many of them have been saying, no, we can't afford it, and so we need the state to help bail us out, but we figure out a solution. But we all need to be actively involved in that discussion. And we all need to realize that there is no easy, simple solution to this. And if we're going to run our present system, we need a lot more money. And the question is, where will it come from? And we haven't found that source.
I don't think we're saying we want it to stay as it is. We all understand we're all taxpayers. We've all had our taxes go up. It just feels like we feel a little bit like we're on the treadmill of you guys are waiting to figure it out. We're waiting for you guys to figure it out. So it's a vicious cycle for us. Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to wind. Ann Watson hasn't gotten to say much. If you want to give us a statement before we wind up, we have some more things to get to. But we really appreciate all of you coming, both Ann's and you, Andrew. We really, really value getting some actual boots on the ground information. So any other comments, go ahead and make them, and then we will wind on this section.
Thank you so much. I would love to add, I'm appreciating Senator Cummings' comment that there's no simple solutions, but we know that this is inherently complicated, and I think it deserves an equally nuanced and robust solution. And one of the things that we haven't talked about here this evening is healthcare costs and the driver that plays in your expenditures in your budget. It seems to me that there are so many factors for you all that are out of your control that when it's time to find where to cut, it just becomes staff time. It becomes programs, things that ultimately hurt kids. And so one of the things that I would love to see one of the things that we have worked on is the healthcare. So, and we have more solutions rolling out and on that front. One is reference-based pricing, which went into law a little while ago, but is taking some time to come to fruition. That should help lower costs. And then there is a universal primary care bill that I am very excited about that is being worked on right now in our health and welfare committees. So anticipating that there's some action on that front, but I am very interested in tackling the drivers that are outside of your control. That and for what it's worth, this idea that the bond was counting against you all for the per pupil spending. That was news to me, and I think that's very interesting. I wonder if there is some work that can be done on that front. So thank you all for what you all do. So grateful. My other hat that I wear in my day job is I'm a high school science and math teacher. So whatever we decide is also something I have to live with on that front as well. So thank you all so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Okay, moving on to the our board reports. Is that working? I emailed out the leadership report last night because I was woefully behind on it. My work life is busy while the snow is here. But that I think was self-explanatory. So Cashel, do you have anything you want to share with us? Okay.
As you can all see, I'm the only one here tonight. So that's never happened before. But I can't think of anything new that's happened in the school since 2 weeks ago. Was it just last week?
How's your special pantry doing? You guys?
Yeah, that's right. I've ceded some responsibility on that because we've got the new NHS members a little before the new year. So there's like a pantry committee now. But I think it's going well. I haven't heard that it's going poorly. So
I'm just always interested in the pantry, so I'm glad to get the updates.
Yeah. Oh yeah, tonight's there's a boys hockey game, I believe. It's senior night. Hope they win.
5 minutes.
Is there a high school one too?
It's middle school.
Okay, yeah. Did you have a question?
You thinking of any other particular things coming up? I guess we're a week away from, or less, from vacation, so maybe that's where people's energy is. But just trying to think if there's any other special events coming up in the near future we should be aware of.
Yeah, vacation. Our last day of school is Friday, I believe, so that's exciting.
Yay!
I can't think of anything else though.
Okay, thanks. Well, Dr. Mike just ran out of the room to give Dan his book because it is School Board Recognition Month, and Dr. Mike gives everybody on the board a book, which is really nice. But while we're waiting for him, Steve, do we want to have any kind of, we're just announce our upcoming forum? Yeah.
Yeah, I want to remind everybody that there's a budget forum Zoom meeting tomorrow night. Everybody's welcome to attend. I actually felt it was very informative for me, the first meeting, because it's really nice to hear directly from the community what their concerns are about the budget. So, I recommend you all attend. And of course, if you attend, you get to be a panelist and you get to answer questions when they fall into your area of expertise or interest. So I do hope you'll join us. It's tomorrow night at 7:30, and the regular Zoom link that's on the bottom of every agenda works. What else did I want to say? Something, but I forget. I'll hold up.
And having a whole big group of the board there was really good. I thought we had 8 board members in the Zoom last time, and that, I think, showed strong support for the budget and for trying to explain it to people. So thank you, Steve. Okay, Dr. Mike's superintendent report and etc.
Am I on? It looks like my battery is getting low. So what I will first say before I do my report is that the last meeting I was very excited. So I do have to share that since the last meeting, I have a new title. And that title is much better than the title I have now. The title is grandparent. Oops, I pulled up the wrong one. I have 2. That's my first. This is not as excited. Yes, I'm still having some tech difficulties here. But this is Cooper. And he was born Friday at about 3:50 a.m. So Cooper Henry Licklider. So we're very thrilled and happy to have a grandchild. So you'll have to deal with superintendent stories about my grandchild from this point on. Yes, my new title is Grandpa. Yes, until thank you. Until Cooper decides maybe he wants to change that name. He may come up with something else. So the other thing is I do have, I felt that at this time it would be a good time to review my superintendent goals because they do relate to the school calendar that I have put out as a second draft. And I did ask as part of that presentation, we have Shannon Leslie here, who's our curriculum director. I also have asked if I could promote to panelist Kaya Korb, who was one of the leading principals on that committee. So Kaya is going to join us, and I just gave her an invitation. And also Mandy Couturier, who's been a big piece of that. But what I want to do is, this is generally about the time I give that mid-year report since we just passed January on my superintendent goals. So I incorporated some of our discussion into that. That's a full battery. Okay. Yes. So this is about the time I had 2 goals this year, and I will, as I'm pulling this up, what I will also share is that it's every superintendent and principal's wish to have people show up to board meetings and talk about academics. So while I would say most of the comments I've heard from parents have been some concerns with proposing early release, I am thrilled that we have discussion about that because that's why we're here. We're here to promote academics, and we did not propose this because we wanted to have less rigor for students. We're proposing, moving forward with this because we want to have more rigor and make the time we spend in the classroom more productive. And so I'll go through a little bit of that. But my first goal this year was to start something that I had before, which were superintendent advisory groups to support advocacy and also enhance our community voice, and also to give a connection to me to what we're hearing. So I have developed one group this year. I would like to add another one next year, but I'm not going to be able to. I don't have the time to start two in the same year. But Ashley and Cindy can certainly have part of that discussion because I've invited them to all of our meetings. But I've started by inviting PTO officers from all of our different schools to a meeting. So we have met at this point about every other month, and the first half of the meeting, I give some kind of overview and update on the budget. So that has really been on Act 73, what we're seeing with Act 73, and also the budget and advocacy for getting people to vote. We respect people's rights to vote yes or no on the budget, but we want to have a high turnout, and this group has been very helpful and in asking questions, and also just giving me input on what parents are saying in all of the buildings throughout Harwood. And we have representatives from the boosters at Harwood to Warren to Brookside, and we've had a really good attendance. Ashley and Cindy have been able to give some inputs as well and ask questions, and then we give the second half time for the PTO officers just to share and collaborate among themselves. There's always discussions. Some schools, I think of the Fayston School that put in a beautiful playground 2 years ago. Other schools are thinking about doing similar things. There's discussions about what have you found to be beneficial for fundraisers. So all of that has been very helpful. So that goal, I will say, is well underway and for this year complete, although I would like to add next year more of a community advisory council to have two groups as advisory groups. And that would be, again, it's something that I've done before in that I try to have a good balance of some people who are alumni, some people who are just community members who don't have anyone in school, some people who may have children who've left. But it's just a good way to get an overview and to learn a little and also to share our message with people who are concerned and engaged in the schools. So we have two community members and a third who I understand may be interested in running for the board. But I think Suzanne and Steve would be great people that I may call on to see if they'd be interested next year in meeting every other month to talk about that. But people like that who are engaged, who understand, who have different viewpoints, and also it's a low commitment. It's not the same as being a board member, but it is something that gives us a feeling for what people with different perspectives in our community say. And then the second goal was to build a strategy for school improvement amid policy instability. So part of our conversation, and this was conversations I had with some of my colleagues around the state as Act 73 came, and Act 73 has been very destabilizing in that schools, communities aren't sure what to do. So a lot of times what you see is people just remaining stagnant. And just for some perspective here, I think of our school district, we were formed from the Washington West Supervisory Union in 2017. There was a lot of work that had to occur to develop policies, to develop unified boards, and it really, from what I'm told, took a good 2 or so years to really get those pieces in place. So that kind of held up any kind of significant forward momentum. And then we hit in 2020 something that I think most people remember, which is COVID. And COVID then put us kind of on that more stagnant status quo path because we were concerned about students' health, faculty's health. So we weren't charging ahead on academic goals and those kinds of school improvement issues. 2022 was the tail end of COVID. I started in July of 2022. I was getting my feet wet during the first year. I was told that there's going to be some, we're considered a higher spending district for what that means, whatever that means, and that, but we generally support budgets and things will be fine. We may have to make some reductions. And then we had 2023. The last 2 years, we have really been focusing on budgets and reductions and all those things that we don't like to do. So that was at the point last year when I was talking to principals about this time of the year of what are we going to do? Are we going to try to maintain status quo? And everyone felt very strong in the idea that we have to move ahead, and we have to move ahead as if there's going to be no change. There may be, but we can't continue to stay that status quo, which led to this piece. And I will also say the first part of this, the strategy that we've been talking about, and there's multiple layers to this, and the board has heard some of the pieces to this. It really started with the district's continuous improvement plan, the SIP plan, which we presented and the board adopted 2 years ago towards the end of the year. Shannon's been a key player in that. And when you develop a strategic plan, and the SIP is basically a strategic plan, you just have to decide as an organization, is this a strategic plan that we're going to write for compliance sake and then put on the shelves and take out when the state comes in to check, or is this something that we're going to make as part of our operations and really strive towards it? And we chose the latter. We chose that this was something as a team that we felt we really needed to invest in and take seriously. That then led to the requirement, which was a good requirement of the state, to require building-based continuous improvement plans, and they were adopted towards the end of the year last year. Shannon and our team presented on those building-based plans, and that's a part of every one of our administrative meetings. We have a focus on some element of that plan, whether it's data, some of our targets. And so much so that we actually volunteered. We have a meeting tomorrow afternoon as part of our district quality standards. The Agency of Education is developing, one of their new teams is developing a process by which to review districts every 3 years. So it's a monitoring. That already, what to go to some of those.
Chase, we need those batteries.
So with the monitoring, we're playing a part in how do we look at this, and what's been shared with us already, that as a district, and Shannon, if she wants to chime in now or later, as a district, we have been doing an exceptional job on our data review for that. So with that, one of the pieces that that we as a team have decided we need is more regular, consistent, protected time with staff for things like curriculum alignment, data review, coordination. So that is a piece. So we have various layers, our district level continuous improvement plan, our school level plans, our curriculum review cycles, and layered over all this is that need for time, which has been we've taken a significant hit. Now, while we do have full day professional development, which I'll review a little bit of how that's used later, we also, it's for the most part, it's dedicated to a particular task that may be driven by something like family conferences, or it's beginning of the year in services, or it's related to specific time-bound initiatives. So my first year, one of our biggest initiatives the first year was to reduce restraint and seclusion. So our professional development was really focused on that piece for those full day sessions. But what we found and what I've shared with the board and some community members is that the research shows very strongly that the most effective professional development is that which occurs on a regular basis. So with that, I talked a little bit about our continuous improvement plan. I'll go through this pretty quickly. And here's where I note that one of the pieces is our district quality standards, and that we're piloting that with the Agency of Education. Our two general goals are safe and healthy schools, which really fall in the realm of social and emotional learning, which you heard a lot about from Mandy Couturier, and also then our academic achievement, which Shannon has shared with you as well. These are slides that the board has seen before on our goals related to SEL, our goals related to literacy outcomes, and I will pause again on this. So one of the pieces when I came into the district one of the first things I ask about is our literacy programs. And at that point, again, we have to remember that now about 8 or 9 years ago, we were not one unified district, but we were 5 different districts: the Waterbury-Duxbury District, the Moortown District, the Waitsfield District, the Fayston District, the Warren District. They all had their different standards, their own governing pieces. There was a supervisory union that oversaw it and helped coordinate, but they all made very independent decisions. So at that point, there was a literacy committee that Shannon was working with teachers, really strong teachers from every building, to try to discuss and come up with some common frameworks among all buildings. That work was originally funded by Title II, and then we were informed by the state that we could not use our Title II funding for our literacy committee because it really had to be devoted to professional development. And they were not at the piece where they were proposing professional development. They were still working through those literacy pieces. It also kind of went out the door when we had to cut funding, and we are continuing to cut funding for after-school work of committees and stipends. So that's another significant piece. But this is an area that needs, and I think our staff will agree with this, that we need to focus. We started a process of doing some piloting with curriculum. The Warren School did a phenomenal job of piloting one of those programs, and that's when things kind of stopped when we hit the budget of 2023. So that's where we are right now, with kind of that intersection of our academic goals and intentional time, because we know that when you focus, when you have a plan that you focus, that you measure, and that you continuously come back to and develop, that you do move your academics. And this has been my experience as a superintendent elsewhere, that's how you make intentional time, but you do it by involving your staff and working on a regular basis. You can't do this on a workshop every 6 months. But some of the important pieces, and this is something that John's talked about, and this mirrors state trends. We've seen now over the last 2 years a pretty significant increase in our identified students with special education. It's not because students changed. It's partly because Act 172, another one of our acts, which was put in place for very good purposes, changed some of the rules of identification under the premise that we were going to put, as a state, more money into education and intervention earlier in the child's education. Unfortunately, it was an area that was not properly and well instituted by the Agency of Education. There really is no technical training and assistance at the state level, not that I'm used to. So that's part of the reason, and that's part of the charge of Mandy to help us put those systems in place. But again, when you're putting in a system, and that's, again, Mandy, you can certainly ask her questions when I finish here, but that's an area that requires intense focus and coordination. It can't happen through email and through occasional discussions. MTSS, again, is that area, and when we talk about multi-tiered systems of support, it also is based also on our curriculum, and that again goes back to our literacy piece, and it's a circle back to that and the importance of that. Your tier 1 instruction is what all students receive, and if there's, it makes it very challenging if we do not have common understanding and common focuses for instruction. Moving on to how our professional, this is a question that I was asking that Caitlin, I hope when she watches this, she sees. This is our current use. So we have our teacher's contract calls for 188 days, 178 of which are student days. The other 10 are professional development days. Most of the days occur either before school or after school. There's some that are embedded within the school year. Some November 24th and March 20th are days that are compensation for teachers who are here meeting with parents after hours. So, for example, November 24th is the Monday of that Thanksgiving week. Even though teachers are technically working, that's compensation, so they are home on that day. It's compensation for the hours they put in evenings meeting with parents. So when you look, we have generally 4 days before the school for various purposes, generally more operational pieces, getting school up and running, preparations, meetings, connections with parents. During the school days, we've had 3. I did reduce in this calendar that a day by 1. So you will see that our traditional November all staff in service this year, we did it at Harwood, and that we usually do it at Harwood. This is the one I gave the example from my first year when we brought in Diane Carreri to do the work on restraint and seclusion. That's one of the pieces. And then January is also, January this year, there's a different emphasis every year. The beginning of the day, half the day was spent here at Harwood. If you remember, there was a required hazing, harassment, and bullying presentation where we were required through an agreement with the Human Rights Commission to institute. So they're the kinds of things that occur on a regular basis. The second half was building directed, going over elements of the school year, moving into that second half of the school year. Family conferences, and then there's a building directed day after the student's last day. So our days are used. They're used effectively, and they are contractual days that really are devoted to professional development, but a different kind of professional development than we're looking at. What we're proposing is something, while it is different for us, I've been told from some parents who have older children who mainly have graduated from Harwood that this was something that we did a number of years ago. Early release days are something that from the time I was a elementary school student in Pennsylvania to a teacher in Pennsylvania to a superintendent, we always had at least 4 early release days a year for purposes. So it was different for me coming to a district that did not have it. But if you look at our district where we are in the minority of schools that do not have early release days for focused professional development. Our committee, which Kaya and Mandy were part of that, spent a great deal of time over the last year researching, talking to people. I've talked to superintendents about the effectiveness, and everyone I've talked to has given them high ratings. I've had a conversation a couple of times with the superintendent at Mount Mansfield. They have about the similar number of school days as we have. They have 8 early release days, and the superintendent prior to this year was the assistant superintendent at St. Albans, where they also had early release days, and he has nothing but positives to say about the intense work that you can do and the kinds of work that teachers can get out of those days. But if you look around us, most districts on our immediate kind of 360 degrees have them. Mount Mansfield, Washington Central has early release days, not 3 hours as we're proposing. Theirs are less, but theirs are more frequent during the school year. I just had a meeting yesterday with the superintendent from White River Valley Supervisory Union, which is to our south. They have 14 early release days, 2 hours on Fridays at the end of the day throughout the year. So most Fridays. I had a conversation with the superintendent at Montpelier. Our team also talked to their curriculum people that they have early release days that they just instituted last year, and to really high success. In fact, they're expanding next year because the principals and teachers have said they are beneficial to curriculum and ongoing learning and do see a direct impact in the classroom. Champlain Valley, I spoke to Adam Bunting, Mount Abe, Barry, Central Vermont Supervisory Union, and then I was curious. I visited Burn Burton Academy, which is one of the 4 historic academies, but I did not know if they had early release of any kind. Some schools have gone to the morning. So Burn Burton, which has a very high academic rating, they have weekly. They have weekly devoted professional development time from 7:30 to 9 o'clock at the beginning of their day on Wednesdays. And I think their results speak for themselves. They have a very high reputation, of academic reputation. So I have not been able to find anything negative towards the structured use and fidelity at which they are using their time. I can talk a little bit about the results that I received from the survey that I put out last week. And one of the recurring themes from teachers have heard me and my predecessor talk a little bit about the common calendar requirement. A lot of the feedback from parents that I received was over concerns about, why do we have the full week off at Thanksgiving? Why do we have the breaks that we do? And the state statute requires that superintendents of the regional Career Center, so in our case, the Central Vermont Career Center, that we meet and develop a common calendar, because all of our students go to that center, and career centers and career and technical education have a requirement of so many hours in their different programs. So if we all had different calendars, that would impact their structure and the education they're required to deliver. So we meet, we have a discussion. Usually it's over email, and then we have a meeting, and then we have some follow-up. But one of the things is that I've advocated for was finding a way to reduce the February break. I was in the minority on that question. So what we have is really the requirement we have. We have very little flexibility. Some of the comments are, why don't we have the similar kinds of breaks as, my friend does in, Lamoille South. Well, Lamoille South is part of a different career center. Mount Mansfield's part of a different career center. So even though we may be bordering some of these other districts, they're not the districts we share a career center with. So that does impact us. And I will also remind everyone that this is one of the last years that I will have to develop the calendar, because part of Act 73 was requiring a common statewide calendar developed by the Agency of Education. So we'll see how that goes. But this is the calendar. I did make a change. So of the feedback I received, I had about 101 parents respond to that survey out of about 3,400 parents. So I had about a 3% return rate. And of those parents, my question was not do you like early release days, because this is something we're proposing, but do you like the distribution? And it was 3-to-1, so about 75% said I don't like the early release days, and I don't like the calendar. We heard others, and the board's heard from some of those people as well, who's saying, yes, I think it is a good thing. I think it will improve instruction. For teachers were reversed. So it was roughly 20% of our teachers respond. And I will also add that since I started, my practice has always been to put out the calendar and ask for input, recognizing that it's the superintendent who in the end is responsible for doing it. That was not previously done until 2022 for teachers. I started that for teachers that year. This is the first year that I put out the survey for parents, and I felt I needed to. So this is data that we did not have prior to my superintendency, and data that I think is important. But they are the results we received. The general feedback, as you can imagine, from parents was really, there was some concern about instructional time. The overwhelming concern of the parents, the 75% who said they were concerned about it, was really over the issue of childcare, which I fully understand. Our committee has fully understood, and that is a challenge there. But in the end, what I've shared with parents that I've talked to, maybe it's just I'm talking too much. I don't usually talk this much. But what I can say is, as Ashley has said, that nothing in statute requires board approval. Most districts in Vermont, the superintendent proposes and announces. Some boards could have a policy on adopting a calendar, but I also work for the board. So if there is strong opinions expressed by the full board, then I would certainly take heed to that. But what I will say is we're not proposing this because we think we'd like to have extra time in the afternoon. This certainly is not easy for principals or myself. It would be far easier to not have early release days. But from my experience, if we want to move positively for academics, that this is the route that is important. So my job as a superintendent and your superintendent is to advocate for what I feel is best for education. I feel very strongly that it's not the minutes that count, it's how those minutes are used. And we've received throughout the year, again, we not all the teachers, about 75% of the teachers, it was, I think, 79% liked the distribution of early release days. There was some concerns. Some of the pieces where they would have liked it on a different day or at a different time. Some of it was same things. Some of them have young children, are concerned about the childcare piece. And some of the concerns with I think the calendar, do you like the calendar as presented? I think it was 60-40, but I also gave an option because our common calendar had us going to school that week in December of the Monday, Tuesday, so the 21st, 22nd, and being out of school the 22nd. I heard some kind of just anecdotal feedback that people may like the 23rd, so I put that on the teachers list as an option. Would you prefer that I swap end the year one day earlier and put a day in on the 23rd? And 60% of the teachers said that. So some of the people who didn't like the calendar as presented wanted that change, but in general, from having put out calendar surveys for teachers and asking them what they think, generally I get 60 to 75% any year. It's never unanimous. Everyone always has their own opinion, but I always look for a consensus, and that's that piece. I would before opening it for questions, I did want to have Shannon, one of our in-service in in November, we had the Vermont Math Institute present to teachers, and it was actually one of our former teachers who now is the executive director of that organization, and there was an exit ticket that she gave for the teachers, and if you could talk a little bit about that and share with them the results from the exit ticket.
It's green. Okay. Sure. So this year I'll just give a little backstory. This year for our October and November in-service, we really wanted to run with the idea of ongoing continuous professional development. Even though it was only over the course of 2 days, we still wanted to see what kind of impact that would have. And so all of what we did is we designed 9 different offerings that occurred across those 2 days, and teachers could sign up for 2 out of the 9, and they would do 1 in the morning both days, and then 1 in the afternoon both days. And we had a mix of both people from outside of the district and inside of the district facilitate those meetings. And one of the meetings was about how to apply some pretty specific math practices to grade levels K through 8. And it was taught by Catherine DeLay, who was a former math teacher here, and now she's helping to run the Vermont Mathematics Institute program. It's a highly reputable program. We've had several math teachers come out of that program with master's degrees. And so Catherine came in and facilitated those sessions, and she gave folks what we call an exit ticket, a Google form to fill out at the end of the second day, so the end of the session in November, and just asked for some feedback. And then she shared that feedback with me, and overwhelmingly, and this was a highly attended session too, it was one of our more popular ones. And she shared the feedback with me, and the feedback was overwhelmingly like people really appreciated the strategies that they were learning and wanted more time to collaborate with colleagues on their new learning. And November was it. So with this plan that we're hoping to execute next year for early release days, imagine if teachers could start in September and then continue in October and continue in November and take their learning, go apply it with students, come back, meet with their colleagues, talk about what's working, what's not working, and continue to test and collaborate and test and collaborate. And I truly believe that that method of really intense, we call it job embedded professional development, will really will help us see even more student improvement across the board.
And before I open it to questions from the board, I would just ask that Kaya and Mandy share a little bit. They've been instrumental in this work, and just share a little bit about the plans, the schedule plans, and the intentionality and how we intend to use it. We did share some basic information, some general information with parents, but if you could just add a little bit of your perspectives before we open for questions.
I'll start, Kaya. Get it over with. Everybody knows how much I love talking in front of you all, but I'm happy to talk about this. This was a long process that started from conversations of like, how do we fit more things into the day, right? Because if you ask teachers what they need is time. Almost every teacher will tell you, like, what can I do to help you? What do you need? And they're like, well, can you give me more time? I can't put more hours in the day. But that's where we kind of started this conversation. And we've had really robust, creative conversations. We've thought of a lot of different things to do with time if we had it, and really landed on a couple of things. And so I think we're going to, we need to further hone that. But we have no shortage of things to do and collaboration to have. And I think, using the school-wide SIPs this year to really plan what we were going to offer in October and November, like based on what the overlap and the commonalities that our schools actually came up with on their own in their continuous improvement plans, was a great place to start. And it really showed us, oh, this is how to do this work. We've had really great ED in the 18 years I've been in this district, but sometimes it feels disjointed and there's lots of starts and stops. And we really want to have it feel more continuous and over time so that we can really commit ourselves to it.
I think the only thing that I would add to what's been shared is that in talking to other districts about what they felt they were able to achieve, what were the outcomes, they stressed two areas. One was in being able to implement anything new. If you're implementing a new curriculum or you're trying to implement particular strategies, it was really helpful to have to have time spread out throughout the year so you could take action, come back, reflect, bite off manageable chunks. So South Burlington talked about a literacy curriculum, or strategies they were specifically doing to address early reading skills, and they felt there was no way they could have made rolled the things out that they did without this ongoing work. And then the second part being related, but really honing in on the fact that when you do work and then you're able to go and you do learning and then you're able to go and practice and then come back and refine that's what continuous improvement is. And with our days that we have now, we lay out some great ideas early in the year, and then we're really siloed in our own buildings. And that's not very efficient. It's not necessarily a best practice when you say have only one kindergarten teacher because there's not another kindergarten teacher to talk to. So we set some lofty goals in our continuous improvement plans across this district, and we had that time together, and then we've really been on our own to try to move them forward. So I think that this work will allow us to, this time will allow us to really efficiently, more efficiently and more effectively bring forward the kind of change that we want to do. So any one of our, I feel like it sounds vague. I think any one of our continuous improvement plans could give you the specifics of what we're looking on. So for example, at Waitsfield this year, we looked really hard at writing, and there's been ongoing work on that. And it's really been just at our school, and that isn't as efficient as it could be by any means.
Oh, thank you, Kaya, and thank you, Mandy. Okay, there we have our presentation. Does anyone have questions for Dr. Mike? We'll start with Pam, and then we'll go to Steve.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, I know we got at least one email from the community. We got a bunch that had concerns, but we had at least one who recognized how important these continuing days are and how they're important for the teachers. One concern we've heard from Waterbury is, what are the students going to do on half days? Are there going to be parameters about no extra recesses, no movies those days, or something to make sure that the time that they're spending in the classroom on those days is still, I don't want to say well spent, but I'll put quotes around it, well spent time?
The short answer is yes. And what I will also share is I know that there have also been concerns shared about the fact that all of our schools have a ski program, and it does get challenging. And that's also a piece where I've heard from parents who are concerned. One of them spoke tonight. I also have heard from a larger number who feel very strongly. In fact, one building did not have the same kind of program that others had, and it was parents who came to myself and the principal saying, "We feel that this is not only just fun, but number two, it's education, and number three, it's our economy." And this parent spoke about her husband who works in the industry and how not only is it important, but it's equitable to make sure that our students, because it's a very expensive sport. So, but I will share the flip side of that is, and Mandy has had her office, at Cross of Brook, has shared that when students return, not all students return. A lot of the parents will come and keep them and have them there for the rest of the day. And we respect our parents' decisions. But if you're a teacher who then has a class of 20 students and only 6 of them are there, it presents logistical challenges. So there's things that we're going to have to work through. Some schools have been able to solve that, but it's one of those pieces that we live in. We live close to Stowe. We live in the Mad River Valley, close to 2 resorts, and it's not just part of our culture; it's part of our living.
So I want to discuss some concerns parents have brought to me as well. So first of all, I want to say I think the setup of these early release days scattered throughout the calendar school year, I think it's really good, and I appreciate the effort that a lot of people have put into creating them. I think it looks like a really exciting program. That being said, as Dr. Mike mentioned, having a bunch of early release days does put a burden on many parents, and I'm wondering if there's some ways those burdens could be addressed. So, I mean, is it possible to move the early release time back more towards the regular end of school day so that parents don't have to do quite as much shuffling or picking up extra expenses for childcare? I'm a little confused, and I think some of the parents is whether the number of professional development days is increasing under this new schedule. Is the number of hours increasing, or is the hours stable, but the number of days are increasing? Just like some clarification on that. But I think the most important question is, can we lessen the burden on parents for these early release days?
Notice.
Fully out.
Can I I'm happy to answer that a tiny bit, but I can't. Well, not that I can't. I'm just not sure I have all the answers you're looking for, Steve. But as a parent, that's one of the things I obviously thought of. A parent of school age kids sitting on this committee, and many of the folks that were on this committee were in a similar situation, right? We have this awesome thing where many of the people who work here have the kids here, and so we understand that wholeheartedly. It was one of the reasons that part of the work that we did is we sent out information once Mike had sent out the calendar, the draft calendar. Everybody, the first next group we reached out to was our after school care options, all the way from after school childcare that happens in the buildings, but to the libraries and other things. So we don't have the answers necessarily about what will be offered, but we are interested in making sure that our community, the systems of support and care within our communities are involved in this and can and know about it, so that's not like a shock to anybody's system. And what can we do to make those days continue to be enriching, even if they're not in the classroom for our students, because they're going to get more from their teachers because of it. But we want to make sure that we address that exact concern about childcare and after school. So, and one of the reasons that we talked about what time we would do early release is, when I was the principal at Moortown, and this comes to mind very clearly, we tried to, especially during COVID, is we tried to kind of stick to one thing so that there wasn't a lot of confusion and forgetting. So eco, for example, we tried to do eco on Tuesdays. Everybody that we could get on eco on Tuesdays, we tried to make it the same day as skiing would be later, because families said, if you just make it one day, it's way easier to make sure I pack everything that kids need to go to these things, right? And so when we were thinking about what time early release could be, we tried to aim for a time that people were used to. And one of the I'm glad that Mike talked about Burton having that late start. Kaya found when in her, and I can let her speak to it if she wants to, but in her research that a lot of schools moved to that late start. And one of the things that now I've lost my train of thought. I shouldn't have talked. But I think that, when we were looking at late start, we were like, we'll do a 2-hour late start because people are used to that 2-hour delay already, right? So they know when the bus comes, because if you try to make it 90 minutes or or we had 90 minutes delays years ago, and it was confusing. What time is the bus going to come? What time is dismissal? That sort of thing. So we were trying to stick with something that families already were familiar with. And I know I didn't answer all of the elements of your question, but I just wanted to answer those.
I'd like one other thing to add, Steve, to your point about could it be later? Less time. So Mandy spoke to one of the reasons why we were looking for a consistent time, matching what other early release times are. We are looking to pack a lot of things into these days. So in addition to the continuous improvement plan, action planning work, we're also folding in a number of things that are currently being, quite honestly, paid for outside of the school day. And they're either being paid for with stipends that is out of our regular budget, or through funds from federal or grant sources that we no longer have. So for example, we have leadership teams that meet after school hours. That isn't in the budget anymore. So in addition to the professional development work we've been just talking about, we are also using these as a tool to continue some of the really important work that our district does that we can't fund in a different way. Our safety teams will meet during this time. So if we made it a later time, we wouldn't be able to fit those things in. and it's pretty. We've made sample schedules. It's pretty packed in now.
Was over the number. So if you think of them as separate pieces, the number of professional development days is 10. That doesn't change. It's just most of those days our parents don't see because they're either before school or after school, or in the cases of the family conference compensation, they are tied to other kinds of breaks or other weekends. So that doesn't change. Our opening district day and kind of the afternoon and all day faculty meetings, which is the nuts and bolts of the school year, that doesn't change. That's before the school year starts. It does include the January professional development. We do have a January professional development day, full day, that's tied to the Martin Luther King Jr. Weekend traditionally. And we also have a day in October that's traditionally around the time of Indigenous Peoples Day. The other November day we have eliminated from this calendar, and that'll be done before the school year. But they are separate pieces, and they are different kinds of professional development than what we're envisioning. And what we're envisioning is what is needed to move our academic programming forward. And again, like I said, it would be far easier for this team that you've heard from to say, we're not going to do them. It will, in the end, from my experience, having done similar types of things, make it work. The other thing I do want to mention, too, is another option that I used in my prior superintendency was we would if we were working with our literacy committee, we would get full day substitutes and take those people out of the classroom. We can't do that anymore. We don't have enough subs to cover our absences right now. So Mandy and Kaya both spoke to those things that were funded with budget dollars with stipends. That is becoming increasingly more difficult to do. Getting substitutes and pulling teachers from classrooms, we can't do that anymore. We'd love to. It's least disruptive because generally those teachers are in the building or close by and you have a good substitute, but we just don't have the people to do that anymore.
Yeah, I appreciate all those answers. So it kind of, in summary, it sounds like the professional development being proposed it's really good for the teachers. That means it's really good for the students, and it's harder for the parents. So I like the part of Mandy's answer where she said that, the district is reaching out to libraries and other after-school resources. And I just would encourage that to be kind of promoted, that the parents learn about this, and that these opportunities be extended as much as possible.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I would also, not necessarily directly related to this, but we've talked about our pre-K programming and our pre-K hubs. I do want to use this time to also share some potentially good news. Two of our hubs have had providers that have worked with us or will be working with us. We've always had a little bit of a challenge at Brookside. We have space. We would love to have someone in the building. Sarah Schoolcraft, one of the principals, has worked really hard having conversations with multiple providers, and we have one provider from the Y who they have given us permission to share some survey information. So it's not 100% guaranteed yet, but we have a commitment for them to consider it if the numbers work out for them. And we would love to have more childcare providers in our buildings that help families out, and we are committed to doing that. If it's a partner in that sense, we don't charge them. We just they just have to have their own insurance, but we don't charge them as a school district because they're providing a service to our families. I don't know, Mandy, did I miss anything with the piece about the why?
No, it's really, I think that from what I've heard that people are like rethinking their plans for next year because of this opportunity. And there really is, there's so much advantage to dropping off your kiddo at a school in the morning and not having to worry about transition midday or going somewhere else or all of that, and knowing that they are, in the same place, and you can pick them up at the end of the day. So that makes a really big difference for working parents.
And I would also say too that the other piece, we really feel strongly. Again, we also know we work for the board, and the board has different views on this. We certainly take direction very well, but we think this is what's best academically for our students, realizing, and we'll do everything we can for those families. But we realize that for some families, it is difficult. In the end, we think it's going to mean higher academic achievement for our students and better use of the time, and some of the concerns that have been raised from some parents. And I would say kind of two pieces along with that. Number one is we also have to remember, I testified before House Education on school construction, and we kind of veered off into some of the challenges with our teacher supply, that we do not have as many people going into education, and we are seeing a significantly higher number of our teachers, not just in this school, but around the state. But we have a number of teachers who are provisionally licensed, which means they have not gone through teacher preparation programs. They're very hardworking people, but they need skills, and this will also help us in those situations. That's one. The other one I know from just talking to some parents and I said this at the beginning, I love coming to board meetings when we talk about academics. Mandy does, Shannon does, John does. We all love talking about this, so please ask questions. Anytime the board has asked me to bring you some kind of presentation like we did last week, we've done that. So I would just say, please hold us accountable as your administration. We want to be held accountable for this because this is why we're in the business.
So I just wanted to back up just a little bit for information. The ski thing keeps popping up, and I just want to let everybody know that, I went on one of the ski trips. I came back to school. My son always wants me to pick him up early. I never get a chance to. I asked the teacher, I said, is today a good day to take Chase and take him home early? And she's cognizant about the time of what's going on in the school day. And she said, I'd rather you not, because we have a lot to cover today. So people think that we're losing a lot of education time, even that last little hour of the day. She's throwing a lot of information in there, and she's making sure that she's using her time to the best of her ability for all the kids.
So the conversations that I've had with the people at Faith in School, when I asked, would you rather early release or late arrival? I believe I like your program. I like your calendar. I'm 100% on board. I've spoken with the director at Open Hearth, and they also sent a message out to everyone who goes to Open Hearth, which is the after-school program at Waitsfield School, that they will be providing aftercare from the early release till 5:30. But the issue that some of my constituents talk about is, a lot of these kids are going to dance class after school, and they're going to these sole providers, these smaller providers who were not going to be able to do that. So is there, like I said, I believe in the early release program. I think it's much better, but what is the downfall of having a late arrival? Personally, for me, it'd be harder to get to my kids to school, but if you could just answer that question so people could understand why we're choosing an early release over a late arrival.
We talked about both, and we saw the advantages of both, and I was leaning towards the late arrival, but as we talked through and we reviewed some of the results, and Kaya, would you jump in on this piece, because I was not at the entire meeting when we finally came to the conclusion?
Sure. There are pros and cons on every side, but what we heard from people who responded to the survey was that they really preferred having an early release as opposed to a late arrival. So we sent a survey out and we got pretty good response, and we looked to be responsive to that. The other factor is that we did hear from some places who were, again, we talked to all the districts around, people who were doing late starts said that it was harder for after school programs or a dance studio who might do something special, like a gymnastics studio might have an afternoon class, but it was easier for them to staff an afternoon than to switch and suddenly start staffing in the morning. That was why.
And Lang, when I reached out to the group reached out in that letter to all after school providers. We reached out to all of the like the arts, after school activities, dance, gymnastics, all of the places that we had brainstormed that our kids go after school on buses from all of our schools. We reached out to them. So we tried to leave no stone unturned so that maybe there are opportunities for dance classes on those early release days.
You know, it was more of a question. My question really was, what's better for the teachers and their development? Is it better for an early release where the kids are there, the kids go home, they do their stuff, they can talk a little bit more, or having their development in the morning? I believe that early release makes more sense. I just wanted the other side of the story to be presented in the meeting so people could hear the words. I think it makes more sense for the teachers, but I'm not a trained educator.
One person said, and it like stuck in my mind, like, when I get to school in the morning, my focus is the kids walking in. I'm getting ready for the kids walking in. I'm psyching myself up. I'm doing the last minute things. And so having professional development for 2 hours and then having the kids walk in felt like they wouldn't be thinking about what they were learning as much as anticipating the kids coming in. And I think like that's the best case scenario, right? Is that they can't wait to greet the kids in the morning, and they want to, continue their learning, after their day is done. So I feel like that's a good reason.
So I just want to make a quick statement, not a question or anything, just sort of to throw out a devil's advocate, if you will, opinion. I feel like there is going to be enough time for parents, teachers, aftercare programs, grandmas, grandpas, whatever it is, to be able to plan for, okay, once a month there's going to be an early release. It's going to be on Wednesdays. It's not like this is being put out without there being warning. Like it's way easier, I think, to plan for this than whether or not there's going to be a snow day tomorrow, which can really throw things for a curveball when you don't think there's anything happening and you wake up and you get that phone call at 5:30 in the morning. So I appreciate how early this is being released. I also say this as being somebody that I will not be affected by this because my child does not need aftercare and we live close enough for her to walk home. So, I've got a double thing happening. But that being said, I feel like there's going to be more than enough time to plan for this one day a month that will happen on a Wednesday.
And I would say that's also why the committee put out the early survey in early December. And it's also why for the first time I put out a survey for the calendar this year. It just helps elevate that piece. It gets input. We review the input. And we look at it. One of the other parent inputs that we received that some parents did not like is it's not on the first Wednesday of the month. And we originally looked at that. We talked that through, and when we looked at the calendar, sometimes it just did not make sense for continuity, because if you're coming back at on January 2nd and then the first Wednesday, so that's why there was a couple of months we skipped, and January was one of them. But there was also some months where we put it at a third Wednesday because of the way the days fell and other holidays fell. We were trying to come up with the most logical, least disruptive, knowing it still is disruptive in some ways for parents.
Okay. Thank you, Mandy and Kaya and Shannon. And thank you, Dr. Mike. Does anyone have, I'd like to wind that because we're getting late. Is everyone good? Okay. We're going to move on to, Dr. Mike, do you want to do this? We did. Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry for talking so much, but this is Board Recognition Month, and we always like to recognize the board. So rather than giving you a candy bar or something you wear on your lapel and put in a drawer and never use, we have started a tradition that I like of giving each of you a book in dedication to your service on the board. And then that's a book that you can either give back to me and I will get it to the library. But our preference is, if you are able to, our preference is for you to be able to deliver that book to the school. Our principals and our librarians love this as well. And they would love to find a way for you to be able to, whether it's reading to a group of students or to visit an all-school assembly. They all have their own ways. Ashley, I know you have done that before at the Warren School. Yes. So I would encourage you, like I said, if it just doesn't work for you, just let me know. But we would like for you to be able, it gives you a good excuse to get into schools. For those of you, we have some of you, mainly in the Valley, we've made sure that you go to your elementary school. If you're a Waterbury board member or a Duxbury board member, sometimes we split you between Brookside, Crossett Brook, and Harwood. So we always try to buy the books from local providers. This year they wrap them for us. Usually I hand it out so I can tell you what it is and tell a little bit about it. And I don't have my cheat sheet with me, so I will hand you the books and you can unwrap them. It's a little different this year.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. This is very generous. While everyone's opening, yes, Macon, what's your book called? Oh, a little one. Oh, that's one of my favorites. Lang. I know, that's cool. Emily.
My book is Someone's Gonna End Up Crying. I'm not sure.
Cindy. Ooh, I would like that one. Mine is called The Land of Far Away. It's beautiful drawings inside. Thank you. Rob. Dead. There you go.
Sweater, a story of community.
Oh,
is The Amazing Generation. Is this my generation? What's The Amazing Generation? It's got a skateboarder.
I got Pluto Gets the Call.
And I got Forest, which has something to do with appreciating the national forests.
And just so everyone's sure of where theirs goes, it's to your local elementary school. Corey's goes to Harwood, and Dan's goes to Harwood, and then for Crossett Brook, Emily and Cindy, both of yours are Crossett Brook.
And Dan ducked out to go to a concert because his kid's in middle school, and unfortunately Ben couldn't make it tonight. But this would be their last meeting, so I just want to say they were both great board members, totally dedicated, gave a lot of opinions, learned. Dan taught us a lot of things, and Ben made us laugh a lot, which was really important for the school board. So in their absence, I just want to say thank you to both of them. Okay.
And Phillips will make up for them.
There you go. Exactly. Macon's here to make us, he's the new something. We'll see. Okay. Last big piece is discussion of the capital maintenance plan with Ray Daigle and Lisa Essler. Turn it over to you guys.
Good evening. So first, we're going to apologize for not getting this out to you prior to the meeting, so you had a chance to look at it. But I'm assuming you all have it now. Okay. Looking at our maintenance needs, we have a lot to choose from, and prioritizing them took a while, and paring it down as much as we did, trying to maintain a balance, a budget, available budget in case of an emergency, is more of a challenge this year than ever. So going down through it, I'll just go down through. Interrupt me at any time if you have a question or if I'm not clear. I'll go down through, starting at the high school. We've got flooring replacements. We've got areas that are coming loose, tile work that needs to be replaced. In a couple of locations, we have the fitness room being moved to the upper level to the upstairs gym, and we'll be putting a rubber floor down up there for that, for safety. Annually, we have parking lot repairs. As many of you have driven through the parking lot, I'm sure you've encountered what some have referred to as a lunar landscape. So this is an ongoing concern, just so that we don't have a liability of people tripping or damaging cars or whatever else. The HVAC improvements, sections of the building are have insufficient ventilation. Both the new fitness area and the old fitness area, we're lacking in ventilation, so we're improving those, and just trying to keep up with that. These are projects that you're going to see happening every year as long as we can afford them, as our ventilation systems are old, and they were designed for a time when ventilation wasn't deemed as important that we know it is today. The main entrance doors at the high school, if you go over and grab onto the frame and shake it, you're going to see movement. We've continually repaired hinges and parts and pieces, and it's an ongoing maintenance problem. So these were installed in '96, and this is to replace those with appropriate hardware, new doors. The septic tanks, we found last year, a nearby maple tree is enjoying the warm water, and we took over 2 cubic yards of roots out of the tanks last year, and it's critical to replace those before they become unusable or leaking. And so that's a big ticket item. We're just actually this week receiving bids on that project, and They're all right around this, some exceeding 100,000. But so we're that budget number is a good number. We'll be able to do it for that. So let's see, what did I miss here? Oh yeah, the relight project. Where as you remember, a few years ago, the state of Vermont determined that fluorescent lights were no longer going to be sold in the state. We have converted 6 of the schools over to LEDs. The last school is Harwood, and we're starting to do that. We're working on a portion of that this year, and we're just going to keep working on it. Nibbling away at it, if you will. Just the budget for the lights in this room alone is about $60,000, and that's not installed. That's the price to replace them.
Is that relamping them or just changing out the bulbs? My wife's going to kill me because she's an architect. There's a term for when you change out the entire fixture, and there's a term where you just put an LED bulb in. I was just wondering which one we're doing.
A combination.
Okay.
Depending on the use of the room. The hallways were all tube replacements.
Okay.
Okay. Areas like the cafeteria, the library, those will be fixture replacements.
Okay, because like in those building reports we got from the engineering firm, they're quoting like another 3.4 million to switch to LEDs in all the other schools when we've already put the bulbs in. So I just want to make sure we're not spending money twice.
Would we get money to put into those schools?
I don't know. I just want to ask questions about the lights.
So, yeah, we're doing what we can to meet the criteria that we've been handed, without killing our budget. We wouldn't be able to afford it. The design I had an engineer design the cafeteria lights. Just buying the lights by their design, by the spec that they gave, the fixtures themselves were $64,000. We were able to look at it, come up with a similar fixture that will provide adequate lighting and controls for 10% of that cost. So to do what the architects and engineers want to do doesn't necessarily work for us and in our budget. I think part of it is they get paid by a percentage of the project. So,
oh no, I'm with you on that. I know that it'll be a huge cost savings for electricity for the lights. So it's awesome.
Right. And we were able to get a $10,000 reimbursement from Efficiency Vermont for the hallway light fixtures or light tubes in this school this year. One of the things that we've been talking about, Lisa and I have been talking about, is that we need to start getting our engineering for our HVAC systems done, budgeted for and done prior to needing to do the projects. Part of this is we have systems that are old, and we cross our fingers that we don't have a catastrophic failure. And so having the engineering done ahead of time means that when we do have a catastrophic failure, we don't have the downtime waiting for engineering. We can get that done and have it done appropriately. So that's what we're looking at there at the high school. So moving over to Crossabrook School, we're dealing with replacing original carpeting in 3 classrooms. And we're looking at replacing the worn bathroom VCT tiles with an epoxy flooring, which will save us in the long run in maintenance dollars and just, durability. Also at Crossabrook, we're looking to replace the bleachers in the gym. These are manually operated bleachers, and so they need to be pulled out by hand to be used. And often these need to be, because we rent out the space, they get pulled out for one event, but then they need to be pushed in for the next. The concern is that we either need to have staff there to do that work, and just because of their age, there is a potential for injury, and changing this over to an updated bleacher system will avoid some of that injury risk, and also allow the ability for the individual groups that are in using them, that if they need the bleachers out, they can take the control and move it out. And this would be a system similar to what we have here in the high school. We became aware this year that we can't get parts for the fire alarm system. If something were to go down there, a significant part, we could be waiting months to source an alternate. So this price is to bring the fire alarm system up to code, and extend its life. At the Warren Elementary, a few years back, we constructed a wall that separated the gym from the hallway, which greatly reduced the noise. As you know, those who have been in the Warren School understand that it was a pretty open space and shared noise easily. So putting that wall in has greatly improved the classroom experience. However, it also created a challenge with ventilation. And as it was, the ventilation system was marginal at best. And so now it's time we need to improve that ventilation. Because if you've ever been in there during a dance, any kind of meeting or event, it gets pretty stuffy pretty fast. Heat's not a problem, but at the Fayston School, we're looking to repair a section of roof right there, right by the main entrance. It's been an ongoing problem. So it's a metal roof, and we're gonna replace a small section of it there, and deal with that before it becomes a much larger problem. At the Brookside Primary School, we're replacing the gym windows. These are original windows that are in poor condition, difficult to operate, and barely keep the cold out or the heat in. So we started replacing windows in that school this last year, replacing them in the classrooms in the south building, and we've had a lot of positive remarks from the teachers that it's much more comfortable, and it's nice that they can actually open the window on their own without having to call maintenance. At the Moortown Elementary School, we're finding more rot in the siding and exterior trim, and so we're needing to replace some sections of that before it becomes a much larger problem. So let's see, yeah. Do you want to take this piece?
So the proposed total projects are slightly over $1 million. It's $1,036,000. I've given a total of each school. It's highlighted in blue for each school, but the grand total that for this plan work to begin this summer would be $1,036,000. You'll see I did an accounting of our current maintenance reserves. If we were to complete this project proposed for fiscal year 27, at the end of fiscal year 27, our maintenance reserve with the projected proposed transfer for maintenance reserve next year of $500,000 if the budget passes, would be $638,460 left in our maintenance reserve. It is not a lot of money. It is not a lot of money. So I'm extremely concerned with the amount of money that's in our maintenance reserve. That is it's never been this low. Would I like it to be 8% of our operating budget every year that's put in there? But what I do want to say is at the end of this year, we will be looking at what our ending balance will be for this year. And if we do have, it's a little too early to determine what my ending balance for fiscal year 26 will be. But some of these 20,000, 10,000 pieces will be shifting potentially to our operating for residual balance, depending on where we can. And I'll update the board as that happens. So hopefully this number could reduce, maybe slightly under $1 million. But I'm trying to protect the maintenance reserve. And just as a reminder, and making you're new, we used to carry well over $1 million in our maintenance reserve to a transfer every year. It has been less and less and less every year. Yes, there's less and less. So our budget contingencies with the budget cuts over the years have dropped significantly. So we're budgeting much tighter. We have less carry forward, where we always at least carried $1.6 million, $1 million. Now as you see, the last 2 years have only been 500,000. So there's very little to carry forward.
Thank you. Your answer, and you had a great presentation. I think just the idea that you're looking at numbers and finding ways to get 10% of the cost, and you're paying attention to this every year, is evidence that the district's trying to save money at every turn. As a system, there's challenges, but I think too often people overlook the individuals who are advocates, and I appreciate that very much, what you laid out.
I just do want to remind, this is bare minimum. This is safety. This is safety. We still have over $100 million of deferred maintenance. So that's at the very bottom of my presentation in red. So this is safety, life cycle replacements, but most of this is all safety concerns.
So up on page 2, the parking lot repairs, I know we did some work over the summer and a percentage that was covered by the state. Is that correct? Okay, so there's no possibility of this getting any help.
So did we ever pull a quote of what it costs to repave the entire parking lot? I mean, if we're talking about huge purses, what would that cost? Okay, yeah. One phone call, like you said, one phone call. Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Bobby.
I just wanted to, I'm glad you wrote at the bottom, the 100 million. How much of this reflects the work that we did with the architects? Is this out of that list of the different things that were recommended? I mean, there was kind of a, looking at all of the recommendations they made and then what were actually crucial for us to do. And I had one other question too.
Yes, we considered what they put it in for a list. You know, we certainly added to that list for them, and now it's picking which is what we think is most critical at this time, and we just keep our fingers crossed that something else doesn't fail. You know, we get and Lisa hates it when I call her up and say, "Hey, got something to tell you." We have a circulator motor go in one of the buildings, and it's $10,000.
Right.
You know, and that happens pretty regularly. We've had probably 2 or 3 of those. That type of problem happened this year, and we're not out of the winter.
The other question I had was just whether Moortown, is some of that related to the flood, and is there could that be covered under any insurance?
No, No, that's just age and conditions. Yeah.
So we do all this list. What does happen if something really catastrophic happens and you need to make that phone call to spend more than what's left?
Well, we talk to a lender, I guess. We don't want to go there, but we've got to figure something out. I think that we need to figure this out and not wait for the state to try to do it for us. Because watching these representatives today say that they're talking and considering, and as many of you have already mentioned, that they're just talking and considering, we could be years before that we see anything come out of there that's going to be meaningful for us. And I think that Dr. Mike's work and with that he's been doing in Montpelier, I think is important. But I think we have to take control of our own destiny.
I'll interject at that point. I did testify at House Education today, along with Sean McMahon, who's the superintendent of Kingdom East. He was the superintendent of Winooski when they built their new building. He was principal at CVU when they did their work a number of years ago, and he's our superintendent representative on the state construction task force. So the two of us presented, and it was. Chair Conlon started off by saying to us that the committee spent a lot of time on this, and they have, as a House Education Committee, they've committed to recommending at least some portion of that fund actually have money this year. How much is a question, but they were asking us about different methodology, what are needs, what are community pieces. So I will say I think the Senate's at a different place, but I was very impressed with not necessarily the amount they're looking to do. They're not sure yet, but they do have, he said it was a kind of a bipartisan commitment that they have to start funding this. So that was good to hear. But Chair Conlon's always, I think, been an advocate for public schools. And I think he understands the complexities.
Yeah, I was struck by your presentation tonight because at one point you were talking about getting design for the air handler system for not if it fails, but like when it fails. So it's like we're already planning for it to fail and not that we're replacing it ahead of time. But when it fails, we're going to be proactive about it. So it's like, oh, that's where we are in our lifestyle like cycle of our building maintenance is we are planning for things to fail before we can fix them. And then the other thought I had was just a question, but for like the electrical work or some of the other work, is there a way to work with like the students at the career center to see if they can come in and do it for cheaper as a part of their learning process?
No. So I would like to point out that some of the career centers do special projects, and they will take over or get a local building, and they will do the carpentry, electrical, plumbing. They do it all. So I would leave that possibility out there as something to discuss down the road.
If I can jump onto this, first off, I really appreciate just, hey, we need to think about something other than just waiting for our reps to tell us the same thing next year. So yeah, and I'm here to do that. Like, what can we control? And then how do we put anything we can't direct to people in the simplest ways? But starting with what we can control, I don't quite know what that means, obviously, but I look forward to hearing more about that. But I wanted, so you were just making a comment, right? Oh, the career centers. Yeah. And that's what got me to interrupt. I'm sorry. I just wanted to share something that like has really like, it's more of a like philosophy in the Valley. And it's something I think we run into with our budgets. And I say this as an outsider, just joined the board, is this sort of generational issue where a lot of people moved into the Valley at a time when it was a much more collaborative, like let's all bury the power line down Brook Road and Warren together. Let's all do these projects collaboratively. We're all architects on Prickly Mountain and what rules, right? If you look at the 80s and 90s in Vermont, it's when our population grew and then they just picked up the ladder. But we're in a position now where we need to like get back to that. And we're also facing a bunch of voters who are asking why we aren't doing that. And it's because we're in a system that's more complicated and expensive. I don't need to tell all of you that. But when we bring up these new creative, unconventional ideas, like there is history there. I don't know if it's easy, but it's also it's a political reality where a lot of people who don't know much think we should just do that if it's so expensive. And so I want us to continue that conversation and what it looks like. And I know it's hard. Maybe there's, employers in the valley or in the district who want to help. Maybe there's other sources of partnership, but we're clearly going to have to be creative. And I just appreciate you throwing it out there.
Go ahead.
I'm hearing as wonderful of an idea of it is to utilize folks from the Career Center. There's this really ugly thing called insurance and rules and restrictions. And so while to pick up on what you said, it's a wonderful idea. Unfortunately, I think it's more functional at your own home than in a school setting, which is unfortunate. It'd be a great way to save money, but the whole, there's, maybe for a shed that needs to be a tool shed that needs to be built, but
people fill it up. Like it may work for a small thing, but like I'm not sure how Warren Elementary was built. But like if Warren Elementary was built with community, like you can understand why people would say, why can't we do that? So, but your point exact. And I don't want my kids in a non-compliant structure, right? I hear you about that too, right? But I need them in a structure that doesn't have trees growing in the septic tank. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Well, and just to speak a little bit about the Career Center, because I've worked with the one here, but also before, they do really good work, and they do projects, to Rob's point. Generally, they're very well-defined projects. The problem with a Harwood is this building is so large and so complex, and you can't rip out the ceiling tile without touching HVAC, without touching other systems. The scale, I think what Ray and Lisa were saying is the scale of the kind of work here is very different than the kind of projects that they look for that they can do within the school year. And I know they do. They've worked with organizations and do exceptional work. So I don't want to discount anything that they have done.
I remember there was a story. There's a career center that built a covered bridge somewhere that was being hit all the time. And the Career Technical Center, part of their welding project was to build this, barrier decorative arch thing, which actually ended up doing its job because it did get hit with a box truck. So, but that's an example of a something that was a career center, gave back to the community, was something. Anyway, it's.
Well, what comes to my mind is all those playgrounds that could use improvement. Okay. Our mics are sort of reaching their duration, and so are we here. I know we are there. Let's I don't really tell my thing. Okay. Thank you for that presentation. Now we have one action item, and that is to approve the capital maintenance plan that you just heard, which is the current, very, very current capital maintenance plan.
Is there,
we add batteries?
We can just do I have a motion?
I'll give you a motion to approve the capital maintenance plan for fiscal year 27.
Second from Pam. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. Cindy, don't worry about it. It's unanimous. You're welcome, and thank you, Ray. Really, you're like the Atlas of Harwood. You just carry it all and don't share it, which is really nice of you. Okay, we're going to look at our consent agenda, which is to approve the meetings from our last week's meeting on 2/11 and to approve the board warrant in the amount of $692,604.52. No, $692,604.52. Do I have a motion to pass the consent agenda? Bobby makes a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Lang seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Would anyone?
Motion to adjourn?
A second? All those in favor say aye. Thanks, everybody. That is our last sort of meeting before the tides turn and we add some new members. Macon runs his write-in campaign. Yeah.